Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the February 24th, 2016 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission, and our first order of business tonight is request for determination of applicability, New England Power Company. Project location is 92, 94, 94.1 Bolt Street. The applicant is proposing to install a chain link fence within the 100-foot buffer zone. Is there anyone here for that project? Okay. If I could have you identify yourself for the record.
With Conoco Engineers and Scientists representing New England Power Company.
And can you, I know you're putting up fencing because of encroachments, but can you explain what you're doing?
Sure. What we'd like to do is install approximately, I believe it's 1,100 linear feet of fencing along the property boundary with the adjacent properties. So the property is bound on one side by the river and on the other side by some industrial commercial properties. The adjacent properties have encroached. They've placed large stockpiles of soil, other construction debris, as well as some what appears to be flour or beer waste on the property. So in order to eliminate that encroachment, we'd like to construct a fence, and the fence is also being constructed with consideration for access to the existing electrical transmission lines along the right-of-way.
So, is that it?
That's all that they're proposing, is installing that fence
All
along
right,
the property line.
we had a revised plan. What are the differences between the original submittal and the revised submittal?
Sure. So the revised submittal includes a small portion of fencing that would go approximately eastward from Bolt Street to the river, approximately to the river, along the top of the embankment. The embankment, not really the embankment, there's a former railroad line that forms the boundary between parcel 94, 92, and then parcel 94-1.1. They were planning, National Grid's planning, New England Power is planning to move that fence line to the top of the former railroad bed there. It forms a natural barrier, as opposed to previously they had it put a little further north on the property. And now they have decided if they are to install it, they're going to install it along the top of that ridge, in essence.
So you're going to move it closer to the tracks?
Correct. Right. The former tracks. There's not tracks there anymore. It was a former rail line that went across the river, which is now would go into the residential property across the river. But obviously that rail bridge is gone, long gone.
Now, I for one, am always appreciative of color plans and maps, but I have to be honest with you, the colors, the pink and the orange and the magenta and the green that were used, I had a really difficult time seeing them overlaying on the colored plans that were submitted. You're sort of running, let me characterize from what I understood and what I could tell is you're sort of running the fencing somewhat parallel to the brook.
Correct.
And then obviously offset, but you're also running some additional fencing that's perpendicular.
Correct, perpendicular to that.
To segment out some of the areas.
Correct. And in fact, one of the segments that's being eliminated is one of those perpendicular segments. That was the other revision that was included in the plan, which I forgot to mention. I apologize for that.
That's all right. What is the purpose for the perpendicular?
So the initial perpendicular section that was drawn through the kind of the middle of the property, or the middle of parcels 92 and 94, was actually an interpretational error. They never intended to construct that. It was a stray line on a piece of paper that was interpreted as fencing. So that, in the original plans, was an orange line that went perpendicular, and that has been eliminated completely.
Yeah, so what I was doing, I was having difficulty, I could see how that happened, but I was having difficulty discerning the difference between the proposed fencing lines and I'm assuming the yellow check line is the property boundaries for those
Correct.
parcels.
Yeah.
So it was hard to discern what was fence and what was property bound.
Okay.
How you are maintaining some of the perpendicular stubs that are going back from the main, well, I'll characterize it as the main fence line along the track area, and you're running that down towards the brook. So how close are we getting to the resource?
The current plan is to bring it approximately 20 feet from the edge of the brook there. Get it as close as we can to try and preclude trespassers from getting onto the property from that side. The biggest concern is obviously vehicles. Walking trespassers are less of a concern because they are not capable of bringing large loads and depositing on the property. So they're trying to prevent vehicular traffic down there. So they figure if they can get approximately 20 feet towards the riverbank, it's densely vegetated there. And so the plan would be to not disturb the vegetation in that area and just bring the fence line to that point. Then if we go parallel with the railroad tracks, they would come to the property line in a westerly direction and then go somewhat southerly there's a little bump out that's drawn in there. It bumps in back to the property in an easterly direction, south, and then comes back westerly. And you see that little jog? It's the red line towards the top of the plan. So that little jog has been installed in the event that National Grid, New England Power needs to work on their transmission structures that are out in that portion of the property, their electrical transmission structures. So if trucks need to get to those structures, they need somewhere to pull off, stage equipment, and the like. So they didn't want to encroach on anyone else's property in order to do that. So even for the temporary parking, if they needed it, they wanted to have that area.
Okay, so New England Power owns what's shown as 94.
Correct. They own parcel 92, parcel 94, and parcel 94.1.
Okay, so, and you're going to be putting a fence that runs roughly east to west or west to east on the northerly part of 94 along the tracks.
Correct.
So and this is where I guess is 92, is that just a short little inland parcel, or does that extend all the way up to the track?
It extends all the way to the tracks. It's
Okay,
just a
so
narrow
it's
sliver.
long and skinny then?
Yep,
All right.
exactly.
So because it looked like it's broken up,
Because of our fence line.
yeah, and that's a fence line. So, okay, that's where I was having difficulty with. All right, so now the boundary between 94 and 94.1, that's shown as a property line, but is there also a fence line there too?
We have proposed a fence line along that property boundary, not exactly on top of the property boundary.
Is that the green?
That's
Is that the green line?
Correct, that's the
Right.
green line we have
Okay,
there.
my issue, and I understand the one along the tracks, I understand the one further down. I have a bigger issue with the perpendicular ones that run down to the resource, because, and you sort of hit the nail on the head when you said pedestrian traffic, but pedestrian traffic to us is good, and I don't mean of the human kind, because you have the right to keep people off your property. I'm talking of the non-human kind of pedestrian traffic, and that's what I'm looking out for. Sure. Anything that's going to inhibit the fauna from enjoying the use of that property is not something the commission is going to just say, okay, put the fence up.
Sure.
Okay, if the fence is to the extent that it will be inhibiting deer, it'll be inhibiting whatever, muskrats, beaver, whatever, is using those areas right now, then the fence isn't going to be viewed as necessarily a good thing. Is 20 feet going to be enough? I don't know. The Riverfront Protection Act in the city of Lowell is 25 feet.
Yeah.
I would prefer it to be brought back no closer than 25 feet to the top of bank.
And I think that's a modification we could certainly can make without any question. You know, it wasn't a tight distance that was measured in the field. It was just something that was drawn up on the plans.
Right, and I noticed that. I said you delineate, in your submittal says the delineations aren't,
Right,
you know, exact.
right.
But, you know, we need to get, you know, someone with a tape in the field to put some limits to where we're going here.
Extent of the work,
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I don't have an issue with this at all.
Yeah.
I actually think it's probably a good thing that you're doing this, because we have, I mean, just from the aerials and your description, there are some problematic encroachments here, not only to your own property, but to the resource itself, so I don't have any further questions, so Commissioner Barnum?
I noticed on I was looking online to what they put on there, not here, but they had you have a 100-year floodplain delineated on one of the maps.
Yes.
How much of that fencing is within that 100-year flood area?
None, I'm sorry.
And have you accounted for that situation? In other words, is there anything you need to accommodate in order to take care of that?
Sure. As it's currently designed, there's approximately 25 to 50 feet, again, rough number, portion of the fence that would be within that floodplain area, and it's on the very southern terminus of where they're putting the fence. Because of the limited space volume that the fencing would take up, there's no plan to accommodate or reciprocate any different flood plain that's displaced. We don't expect any to be displaced by the fence, in essence. And it is on the very southern terminus, and the rest of the project is out of the floodplain. And in fact, because we only use the MassGIS imagery, the floodplain that is depicted actually isn't accurately depicted, because, as I had mentioned earlier, the southern portion of Lot 94, at the end of that lot is a pretty steep drop-off to the base of the slope where the floodplain actually does stop. And any fencing that would be installed along that portion of the property is going to stay at the top of that ridge. So it wouldn't be within the floodplain at all. It would just be the southern portion, which is currently being encroached on by the adjacent property owner.
Do you have plans to remove those materials that have been placed there by whoever?
Currently, New England Power is working with the encroachers to get those materials removed. They've had some preliminary conversations. They were productive conversations initially. Things have kind of tapered off in the last several weeks. However, they do have a plan in place to work with them to get those objects removed, the soil piles and everything removed from those areas. The hope is that they will continue to work with us. It may have been weather that caused things to slow down on their end.
Mm-hmm. And once the fence is up, that will fence off the area that has been used by encroachers?
Correct.
Thank
I
you.
hope.
Commissioner Lovely?
I don't have any questions. I think this is a project where, hearing the chair's comments about hindering the free flow of wildlife along the river upland, as long as that's prevented, and we can certainly do that by having the perpendiculars not run the full length towards the water. I would think this project would be a good candidate for a -3 determination. obviously conditioned upon verification that those perpendiculars don't run the full length towards the river.
Commissioner Beardron?
I'm just curious, so the fence on 94 and 92 is like open, right? And it would just be preventing animals from getting into that parking lot. And then the fence from 94.1, that's all open. And again, if anything, the animals would just run into the pink fence, would be preventing them from getting in the parking lot. So why are we so concerned about animal flow?
Okay, well, there's a east-west fence up near the track.
Yeah?
Okay, which is fine, because the track itself forms a natural barrier, but there's, if you look,
The green fence?
yeah, the green fence at the southerly portion of 92 and 94 and the northerly portion of 94.1, that gets no closer than 25 feet,
Okay.
okay?
And you're fine with it not being?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And what's the purpose for the green fence again?
The green fence is actually not for the encroachers. It's part of a larger environmental assessment that's being performed on the property, a hazardous waste assessment that's being
Okay.
done. So what they found is because of the historical use of the area and the property specifically as rail operations for different loading, unloading, there's some low-level arsenic contamination, but it is regulated under the Mass MCP,
Okay.
the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. So the rationale for the green fencing was to preclude trespassing onto the property,
North.
which is, the contamination is limited just to that 94 parcel, 92 and 94 parcel, I'm sorry, that northern portion of the property. So
Okay.
it was to preclude trespassing onto that portion of the property. However, they've been doing risk assessment since the submittal's been made, that shows that there wouldn't be risk even to trespassers' health. Therefore, they're contemplating even removing that fence from the scope of work completely, which is why I feel very confident that were the commission to ask that there would be a 25-foot setback, that wouldn't be an issue because that fence is not required for health and safety purposes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no comments, yeah.
Commissioner McDonough?
Thank you.
Okay. So I agree with Commissioner Lovely's comments that this would be suitable for a -3, just with the
Yeah,
concerns, so.
well, I'll make a motion to issue a -3 determination with the condition that the green fence is brought 25 feet back from, would it be the wetland?
Yeah, well, that all fencing should be no closer than 25 feet to the top of bank.
Top of bank, okay.
So,
I'll second that.
all right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. And the chair notes that there's no one here to speak or offer their concerns.
Thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to tonight's second item is an enforcement order, and it's Lacerda Masonry. The violation location is 76 Magnolia Street, and its disruption of land subject to flooding was observed during a site inspection conducted on February 11th, 2016. Excuse me. Christine, can you fill us in on what this is?
Sure. We got a complaint that someone saw some work being done in the area and knew it was floodplain, so we sent our board enforcement agent out there, and it was clear there was a heavy piece of machinery on the property that we didn't see it actually digging, but it had disrupted the earth enough, and the homeowner indicated that they would be doing further plans on the property within the floodplain. So we asked them to come to the commission to explain exactly the extent of the work they would be doing, and with your recommendation of whether they needed an RDA or an NOI to keep going.
All right, so the photographs that were taken
Yes.
and submitted, there was 4 of them
Yes.
in our submittal. It's difficult to see, but you can clearly see that there's obviously disturbance and that there was a pile. It's hard to tell if that's new fill or if it was just disturbance because of the heavy equipment, but regardless, the Wetlands Protection Act says that it's, it's not just fill, it's any disturbance. So and there's no one here tonight. Did they indicate that they were going to be coming in, or?
Yes. We spoke with them twice and were told both times they would come, and we've sent the enforcement order via certified mail and have the return receipt.
All right. Yeah, I mean, clearly something's going on there within several feet of the Clay Pit Brook, so it's clear. You can see the brook in the background in the pictures. It's really not even in the background, it's just right there. So
Right.
it's definitely on the Clay Pit Brook side that they're doing that work, and disturbances are being done. So for the short term, we need to do two things. One is we need to determine whether or not we're going to ratify the enforcement order, but the second thing is whether or not we're going to add anything to it as it stands now. We've got a heavy rain going on right now, and obviously that snow cover isn't there any longer. But given the nature of that soil, it looks like any ground cover that may have been there is no longer there. I'm concerned about runoff right now into the brook, as given the nature of the disturbance and what it appears is going on. So I for one would like to see that any piles, any disturbed areas, they've got to be covered ASAP, or siltation barrier be placed like before the end of the week,
Okay.
to protect any runoff into the brook and under our supervision until such time that they come in. And if they won't do it, the city can do it. And I mean, this has got to be done. So, all right. It's open for discussion, so.
Can I make a motion to ratify the enforcement order?
All right, so we have a motion to ratify the enforcement order.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Lovely, motion by Commissioner Beardron. Any discussion?
Are we able to add about the silt barriers or the covering of disturbed soil onto the enforcement order that's already gone out?
Yeah, we can do
Yeah.
that, yeah, absolutely.
And if the homeowner isn't willing to do it or unable, what does that mean? I mean,
Well, I don't think we as a city can actually go on and
It's a
do it.
trust, but you
but,
can't.
Yeah, I mean, we need to take more formal action than
Yeah.
that. But, I mean, I mean, the next step, if it's not done, is a per diem. We can levy a $300 per day fine. So, and this is an immediate need. And, generally we give people an opportunity to come in and be heard, but this is literally right on the bank. And they it's maybe an innocent mistake. It may be something relatively minor, but we're hitting the heavy rain time. And, we've just had an inch of rain in the last 12 hours or so. The ground is very soft. It never really froze this winter. And that's evident from just the disturbance that you could see. That piece of machinery never should have been able to disturb that kind of material in that short a period of time unless the soil was very soft to begin with. So,
And Christine, I think I'd give them advice if you find out exactly what they're doing there. Like what type of permit it is, obviously, and then also maybe give them advice for how much siltation they should be putting up. Instead of just putting up a little bit and then us making them do more, just,
Yeah.
if this is their plan, then, go all out and put it along their entire property line or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. But they need to come in front of us.
Yeah, I will call them and have them come to the next meeting, absolutely. We can
The
go out
alternative
tomorrow.
for avoiding us is not good, so.
And is it rule of thumb that floodplain is usually notice of intent?
Well, this is floodplain, riverfront, and buffer zone. This
Yeah,
is
so it's-
multi-jurisdictional.
So whatever they're doing is probably going to be a notice of intent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if it's floodplain, it's definitely notice of intent.
Yeah.
If it's riverfront, it's definitely notice of intent. Buffer zone is, depending on the level of work, could be either, but my guess, just from looking at their proximity to the Clay Pit Brook, that this is very close. So,
Yeah, and since their entire house is probably in the resource area, we'd probably want siltation devices along their entire property line.
I think there's just a small portion of their house that's not in the floodplain,
Yeah,
tiny corner.
that's what I would recommend, just do the whole thing, yeah.
Entire property line.
So we have a motion to ratify the order, and it was seconded. We've given you feedback on how to
Right.
follow up with the
Yeah.
homeowner. Is there anything else that we need to do at this point, other than voting?
And do we need to, well, we had a motion to ratify. Do we have a motion to amend the enforcement order to include the extra?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend the enforcement order to include siltation device along the entire property line.
And I'll second that.
All right, so any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, now all in favor of the enforcement order as amended signify by saying, or ratification as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it on both, okay? All right.
you.
And please implore upon them that, I know it predates your time, but things don't go well for people that ignore us, okay? So just please implore them to come in, we're not mean.
This isn't a new homeowner by any chance, is it?
I believe it is.
Yeah, I mean,
Our records indicate that it's still owned by the bank, but we do think it was a recent purchase.
All right, yeah, we just want to protect the resource, that's,
And up until tonight, they've been very responsive,
Okay.
and so I'm not really
and
sure
maybe
what's
something
going on.
happened, you never know, but they need to come in, okay? All right. Last item on tonight's agenda, and that was, is a certificate, is a request for certificate of compliance, a partial one by Eno, Martin, and Donahue. Project location was 185 to 219 Westview Road, and it's a release is sought for Lot 6 only. And I noticed that it was, Attorney Martin had requested this. I was kind of hoping that he was going to come in.
We thought he'd be here too.
So we must have problems. I guess I was, when I read the COC request, we need the certification from the engineer that it was, as, the project was built out according to the order of conditions, and there was an indication that that was going to be in there, but I didn't see it in the submittal. We have a bank plot plan, but
Joe took the lead on this one, so I'm not exactly sure, but if it's not here, we don't have it. So we'll probably need to get.
yeah, I mean, there's a checkbox on the COC that it was forthcoming or was supposed to be there, but I didn't see one. And there's not enough information on the, did anyone have a chance to go out and look at it? Yeah,
Joe went out today, and he said, to him, the plan, it looks exactly there's just one fence on the property that he had a question about. He didn't know when it was constructed, and that was all
Well,
all the concerns that he had on the site.
well, I think the house is outside of the buffer zone, it's just that the property itself was in the, do you have the file, Christine?
I have the original NOI as well.
I mean, it appears that the, yeah, this was a
Yeah,
Dana
the
Perkins.
house is outside. It's just in
Yeah.
the back corner,
It's
there's
just the back
wetland.
corner. What? I don't remember.
So, I'm
They-
assuming they want to sell the property, that's why they're,
Well, are they looking to use the certified plot plan as the engineer certified as-built?
That would be my understanding, that they're trying to do.
I mean, the back corner of the lot is within the resource, and then there's buffer zone that kind of goes just a little bit to the east of the waste of the property, so to speak. And then the house is completely to the east of that, so, I mean, the structure itself that was built on the lot is completely outside of the buffer zone even. So it's just the fact that the property itself touched, was buffer zone and is in the resource, but, do we know is there an exigency here? Do we know?
I assume it's because they intend to sell the property.
Yeah, they're probably waiting for us to close it out.
I mean, I'm reluctant to take no action on it, but in the same token, I think prudence at least warrants that some of us take a peek at this. It doesn't seem to be an overly complex issue, but I for one would rather just continue to go out and take a peek at it, because I didn't even know about it until just the other day, and I haven't had a chance to look at it, so.
Yeah, I would agree. I see no reason why we couldn't offer a motion to continue until we receive the proper paperwork to issue the partial certificate of compliance. And I would say to continue to the next meeting, which is March 9th.
Yeah, I don't even have an issue if we don't have paperwork on this, because if it looks like, if to us it looks like it was built out according to the order of conditions, again, the house itself is not in the resource. The house itself is non-jurisdictional. It would just be the grading of the backyard. So.
But, Christine, weren't you just saying that Joe went out there today?
Yes.
Oh,
And Joe, well, in light of what you just said, if Joe went out there today and Joe seemed to think that it was consistent with,
The as-built, the plot plan.
Yeah.
He just had a question about a fence in the backyard that he wanted to ask. He wanted me to ask for explanation of.
what was the question?
There is a fence in the backyard that wasn't indicated on any plans.
Do we know where the fence
is
is?
it on the housing side or is it on the,
I think it's on the other side,
so it would be within the resource?
or close to it.
So then, well, in that case, I would suggest maybe we do continue it just to verify, to get the answer to that question one way or another, because I would agree with the chair. I mean, this is a pretty straightforward, certificate of compliance issue. I don't think there's any complications there. I think we just need the time to verify that. When did the request come in for the certificate of compliance anyways?
That's a good question. We got half of it about 3 months ago, and then the completed application until maybe 2 weeks ago.
So after the last meeting, but well within enough time for this meeting tonight.
Yeah, Joe's email says, apologies for the late notice, but I noticed we omitted a partial COC request from the next meeting agenda. So it's not the applicant's fault that we
Yeah.
got this late, it was the city's.
Yeah, this was
We
our
have a
mission.
whiteboard where we keep track of all our projects, and the way it was written, and we thought it was under the ZBA agenda and not for the Concom. So that
Well,
was.
it's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's
I
fine.
mean,
Yeah.
And again, I don't see anything that's problematic here, other than just the characterization. I wish Joe had somewhat placed the fence when he went out to look at this, because if it's, if the fence was up near the waist or something like that, it wouldn't be an issue.
and the attorney representing the owner was planning to be here tonight?
I have the email chain between Joe and, I believe, a woman who works in the office and administrator.
Someone on behalf
Someone
of the applicant.
We were under the impression that Attorney
Someone
Martin
was
was going to be here.
All right, so, some of these questions probably could have been answered if there was someone on the other end of the mic over
Oh,
there.
absolutely.
So I, for one, see no issue with us moving ahead to continue this to the March 9th meeting, and I'm willing to offer a motion
All right.
to do that.
Do I have a second? All right, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. All right, so that'll be continued till the next meeting.
March 9th.
And that's it. Do we, no other business? Okay. All right, do I have a motion to?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn
Second.
by Commissioner Beardron, seconded by Commissioner Varnum. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it, and good night. And we have 2 things to sign.